Hi, I'm Natalie Harper. I stood in a silent bridal suite at 6 in the morning, lace dress hanging behind me, phone buzzing with cancellation messages from every vendor I'd carefully chosen. My mother's voicemail said she'd taken the deposits and booked a cruise. My brother texted that weddings were a waste when I'd be divorced in 2 years anyway. Then Marcus, my fiancé stationed overseas, sent 3 words that changed everything: stay right there. Ever felt the floor drop out from under you on what's supposed to be the happiest day of your life? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The bridal suite at Morning Dove Inn smelled like gardenias and broken promises. I'd arrived at 5:30, 2 hours before my bridesmaids were supposed to show up, because I couldn't sleep and wanted to be the kind of bride who savored every moment. The kind who took photos of the sunrise through lace curtains. The kind whose hands didn't shake when she poured champagne into crystal flutes her grandmother had wrapped in tissue paper 3 weeks before she died. Instead, I sat on a velvet ottoman in my pajamas, staring at my phone as it vibrated against the marble vanity like a dying insect. The first message came from Peony Stem Florists at 5:42. I'm so sorry, but your mother called yesterday and canceled the flower order. She said you were postponing. We've already processed the refund to her card. My stomach dropped. I called the florist back immediately, but it rang through to voicemail. Of course it did. It was barely dawn. Then came the bakery. Hi Natalie, just confirming your mom picked up the deposit check on Thursday. She mentioned you were rethinking the wedding cake size. Let us know if you want to reschedule. I stood up so fast the champagne flutes rattled. My hands went cold. This wasn't a miscommunication. This wasn't a mistake. I scrolled frantically through my messages and found nothing from my mother, Vanessa, in the past 4 days. Nothing from my brother Troy either. Radio silence from the 2 people who were supposed to walk me down the aisle since my father passed 3 years ago. The photographer texted next. Your brother called last night and said the wedding was off. He asked me not to show up. Really sorry for any confusion, but I've already booked another event for today. I felt the air leave my lungs in a way that reminded me of the time I fell off a horse as a teenager. That same stunned, breathless panic. My vision blurred at the edges. I sat back down, pressed my palms into my thighs, and tried to remember how to inhale. The DJ. The caterer. The videographer. One by one, the messages rolled in. All of them had been contacted. All of them had been told the wedding was cancelled. All of them had been paid off or redirected by either Vanessa or Troy. I opened my banking app with trembling fingers and saw it. $18,000 withdrawn from my savings account on Thursday afternoon. The account I'd shared with my mother for emergencies after my father died, because she said she needed help managing bills. The note on the transaction read, Family Matters. My mouth went dry. I tried calling Vanessa. Straight to voicemail. Her voice, smooth and unbothered, asked me to leave a message after the tone. I didn't. I tried Troy next. Same thing. Voicemail. But this time, I heard something in the background before the beep, a loudspeaker announcing boarding for a flight to Miami. I checked the time. 6:17 in the morning. They weren't just avoiding me. They were gone. My chest tightened. I pulled up my mother's Facebook page, something I rarely did because her posts usually made me feel guilty for not being successful enough, pretty enough, generous enough. But there it was, posted 11 hours ago. A photo of her and Troy and his wife Diane on the deck of a cruise ship, cocktails in hand, sun setting behind them. The caption read, Sometimes you have to choose yourself. Bon voyage to new beginnings. 43 people had liked it. My cousin commented with a heart emoji. I set the phone down carefully, like it might explode. My reflection stared back at me from the mirror across the room. Dark circles under my eyes. Hair unwashed. Still in the old college t-shirt I'd slept in. The wedding dress hung on the back of the closet door, a column of ivory silk that had taken me 6 months to save for. I'd ordered it online because Vanessa said trunk shows were overpriced and pretentious. She'd never even seen me try it on. My bridesmaids were supposed to arrive at 8. I looked at the group chat. Nothing. I scrolled up and found a message I'd somehow missed last night, buried under vendor notifications. It was from my maid of honor, my college roommate Allison. "Hey Nat, your mom called me yesterday and said you wanted to downsize the bridal party. She said you felt overwhelmed and needed space. I'm really hurt you didn't tell me yourself, but I respect your decision. I hope you find peace with whatever you're going through." I read it 3 times. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. Vanessa had called my bridesmaids. She'd told them I didn't want them there. She dismantled my wedding piece by piece while I was at work, while I was running last-minute errands, while I was texting Marcus goodnight across 8 time zones. And I hadn't noticed. I hadn't seen it coming. Marcus. My fiancé. The man I was supposed to marry in 8 hours. He was stationed in Kuwait, finishing the last week of a 9-month deployment. We'd planned this wedding around his leave dates. We'd argued with his commanding officer to get the timing right. He'd called me 2 nights ago from a satellite phone, voice crackling with distance and exhaustion, telling me he couldn't wait to see me walk down that aisle. That he'd been dreaming about it since the day he left. I opened our text thread. The last message was from him, sent 16 hours ago. "Landing in DC tomorrow morning. Can't believe I finally get to marry you. I love you, Nat. See you at the altar." My throat closed up. He didn't know. He was on a plane right now, probably somewhere over the Atlantic, thinking he was flying home to a wedding. And I had to tell him there wasn't one. I tried to type a message. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. What was I supposed to say? "Hey, my family stole our wedding and ran off to the Bahamas?" It sounded absurd even in my own head. I set the phone down and pressed my hands over my face. The silence in the room was so thick it felt like drowning. No music. No laughter. No sound of zippers or hairspray or champagne corks popping. Just me and the hum of the air conditioner and the crushing realization that I'd been erased from my own wedding day. A knock at the door startled me so badly I gasped. For half a second, I thought maybe it was all a misunderstanding. Maybe Vanessa was on the other side of that door with coffee and an explanation. Maybe Troy had come to apologize. I stood, crossed the room, and opened the door. It was the inn manager, a kind woman in her 50s named Portia who'd helped me plan every detail of this day. Her face was tight with concern. "Natalie, honey," she said softly, "I just got a call from your mother's assistant. She said the reception's been cancelled and we need to close out the ballroom for another event." I stared at her. My mother didn't have an assistant. Vanessa worked part-time at a dental office. This was another lie. Another fabrication. When did she call? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Portia glanced at her watch. "About 20 minutes ago. She said you'd already been notified." I shook my head slowly. I haven't been notified of anything. And my mother's on a cruise ship right now. Portia's eyes widened. She stepped into the room and closed the door behind her. "Natalie, what's going on?" I told her everything. The messages. The withdrawals. The cruise ship photo. The bridesmaids who'd been lied to. The vendors who'd been dismissed. Portia listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from confusion to horror to something that looked a lot like fury. When I finished, she pulled out her phone and started typing rapidly. "I'm calling our event coordinator and the venue manager. Nobody's touching that ballroom. Your deposit was paid in full, and unless you personally cancel, that space is yours." Relief hit me so hard I almost collapsed. "Thank you," I whispered. She squeezed my shoulder. "Honey, I've been doing this for 30 years. I've seen a lot of family drama, but this is sabotage." Do you have somewhere safe to go after today? I thought about it. My apartment was a one-bedroom I'd shared with Marcus before he deployed. But Vanessa had a key. She'd insisted on it after Dad died, said she needed access in case of emergencies. The idea of her walking into my space, going through my things, made my skin crawl. I don't know, I admitted. Portia nodded. Stay here today. We'll figure it out. But first, you need to call your fiancé. My stomach twisted. He's on a plane. I can't reach him. She checked her watch again. What time does he land? I pulled up his flight information. 10:30 at Dulles. She met my eyes. Then you've got 4 hours to decide what you're going to tell him. I sat back down on the ottoman after Portia left. 4 hours. I looked at the wedding dress again. It suddenly seemed like evidence of my own stupidity. How had I not seen this coming? How had I missed every red flag, every warning sign? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. But even as I asked myself those questions, I knew the answer. I'd been grieving. I'd been busy. I'd been trying to hold together a family that was already falling apart, and I'd convinced myself that love and effort could fix anything. My father used to say that Vanessa had a gift for making people feel like they owed her something. He'd said it with affection, like it was a quirk rather than a weapon. But after he died, that gift turned sharp. Suddenly, I owed her for raising me. I owed her for sacrificing her career. I owed her for staying in a town she hated because I wanted to be near my friends. And when Marcus proposed, she made it clear I owed her a wedding that reflected well on the family. Except this wedding was never about the family. It was about me and Marcus. And Vanessa couldn't stand that. She couldn't stand that I was building a life that didn't revolve around her needs, her schedule, her approval. So she took it. She dismantled it while I wasn't looking and left me here to pick up the pieces. My phone buzzed. I looked down, expecting another vendor cancellation. But it wasn't. It was Marcus. 3 words. Stay right there. I stared at the screen, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. Stay right there. How did he know? He was supposed to be on a plane. There was no Wi-Fi over the Atlantic. No way for him to have received any of my panicked, half-written messages that I'd never sent. I typed back with shaking fingers. How are you texting me? You're supposed to be in the air. The response came within seconds. Landed early. Military transport rerouted through Germany. I'm at Dulles now. Don't move. Don't talk to anyone. I'm handling this. I read the message 3 times, trying to make sense of it. Handling what? He didn't even know what had happened yet. Unless he did. Unless somehow, in the chaos of the last 2 hours, someone had told him. But who? Another text came through. Is the bridal suite door locked? I stood up and checked. It wasn't. I turned the deadbolt and heard it click into place. Yes, I typed back. Good. Keep it that way. I'll be there in 90 minutes. 90 minutes. I looked at the clock. 7:18. That meant he'd be here by 9. But the ceremony wasn't until 2. Why was he coming to the inn? Why now? I pressed my palms against the door and tried to steady my breathing. Marcus had a way of staying calm in crisis. It was part of his training, part of who he'd become over 6 years in the army. But this wasn't a tactical situation. This was family. This was personal. And I had no idea what he could possibly do to fix it. My phone rang. Not a text this time. An actual call. Marcus's name lit up the screen. I answered before the second ring. Marcus? His voice came through clear and steady, no trace of the exhaustion that usually followed a transcontinental flight. Nat, listen to me carefully. I need you to tell me exactly what happened. Start from the beginning. So I did. I told him about waking up early, about the messages from vendors, about the withdrawal from my account. I told him about the cruise ship photo, about the bridesmaids who'd been lied to, about Portia and the ballroom. My voice cracked halfway through, but I kept going. When I finished, there was silence on the other end. Not empty silence. The kind of silence that meant he was thinking, calculating, planning. How much did they take? He asked finally. 18,000 from my savings. But that's not even the worst part. They canceled everything, Marcus. The flowers, the cake, the photographer. They told everyone the wedding was off. My bridesmaids think I uninvited them. The vendors think I'm flaky or unstable or, Nat, his voice cut through my spiral. Stop. Listen to me. None of that matters right now. How can you say that? My voice came out sharper than I intended. Our wedding is in 7 hours and there's nothing left of it. He exhaled slowly. Our wedding is in 7 hours, and I'm going to make 3 phone calls. After that, you're going to put on that dress, and we're going to get married exactly the way we planned. Do you trust me? I sat down on the edge of the bed. Did I trust him? Of course I did. Marcus had never lied to me, never let me down, never made a promise he couldn't keep. But this felt impossible. You can't resurrect a wedding that's been systematically destroyed. You can't undo what Vanessa and Troy had spent days carefully dismantling. I trust you, I said quietly. But I don't see how. You don't need to see how. You just need to stay in that room, lock the door, and wait for me. Can you do that? I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Yes. Good. I love you, Nat. I'll be there soon. The line went dead. I set the phone down and looked around the bridal suite. It felt like a museum now, a carefully preserved monument to something that would never happen. The champagne flutes still sat on the vanity, empty and waiting. The makeup kit I'd assembled over months lay unopened in its leather case. The shoes I'd dyed to match the bridesmaids' dresses, back when I still had bridesmaids, sat perfectly aligned by the closet. A text came through from a number I didn't recognize. Ms. Harper, this is Sergeant Lena Torres. Captain Reed asked me to reach out. I'm coordinating logistics for today. Do you have a guest list? I stared at the message. Coordinating logistics? I typed back slowly. Who is this? Captain Reed's colleague. We served together in Kuwait. He's calling in some favors. I need your guest list, vendor contacts, and ceremony timeline. Can you send those? My hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from panic. It was something else. Something that felt dangerously close to hope. I pulled up the files I'd organized months ago. The spreadsheet with every name, every phone number, every detail I'd obsessed over. I sent it all to Sergeant Torres. Her response was immediate. Received. Stand by. Stand by. Military language. The kind of phrase that meant action was happening, even if I couldn't see it. I walked to the window and looked out at the parking lot. The sun was higher now, burning off the early morning mist. A few cars had started to arrive. Probably guests for other events at the inn. Definitely not mine. My phone rang again. This time it was a local number. I answered cautiously. Hello? Natalie, this is Philip Grayson. Your fiancé just called me. I sat up straighter. Philip Grayson was my father's attorney, the man who'd handled the estate after Dad died. I hadn't spoken to him in over a year. Mr. Grayson, I don't understand. Your mother had access to your father's trust funds, he said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. She was granted temporary stewardship after his death, pending your 28th birthday. That birthday was last month, correct? I nodded, then remembered he couldn't see me. Yes. October 3rd. Which means legal control of those funds should have transferred to you 5 weeks ago. Did your mother inform you of this? My stomach dropped. No. She never said anything. Grayson made a sound somewhere between a sigh and a growl. I sent documentation to her home address in August. She signed for it. According to my records, she never forwarded it to you. Natalie, there's $140,000 in that trust. Your father left it specifically for your education, your wedding, and your future. Your mother has been managing it as the temporary executor, but her authority ended the day you turned 28. $140,000. I felt the room tilt. I had no idea that existed. I believe you, Grayson said. And I believe your mother was counting on that. Captain Reed has asked me to file an emergency motion to freeze all accounts associated with the trust and your shared banking. I can have that done within the hour, but I need your verbal authorization. Yes, I said immediately. Do it. Do whatever you need to do. Consider it done. I'll also be drafting a formal complaint regarding the unauthorized withdrawals from your personal savings. That money was taken without your consent, which constitutes theft, regardless of her name being on the account. I'll have more information for you by this afternoon. He hung up before I could thank him. I sat there holding the phone, trying to process what I'd just learned. My father had left me money. Real money. The kind of money that could have paid for this wedding 3 times over. And Vanessa had known. She'd known for 5 weeks and said nothing. Instead, she drained my savings account and used it to fund a cruise while I scrambled to cover vendor deposits. Another text from Sergeant Torres. Photographer back on board. Florist working on rush order. Bakery says they can have a 2-tier cake ready by noon. DJ is confirmed. Caterer needs final headcount by 10. How many guests? I typed back quickly. Original list was 75. But most of them probably think the wedding is cancelled. Leave that to me, she replied. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know how a sergeant I'd never met was managing to undo in 30 minutes what Vanessa had spent days destroying. But I also didn't care. For the first time since I'd woken up this morning, I felt like I could breathe. A knock on the door made me jump. I walked over carefully and looked through the peephole. It was Portia, holding a tray with coffee and pastries. I unlocked the door and let her in. She set the tray down on the table and gave me a long, appraising look. You've got color back in your face. That's a good sign. Marcus is coming, I said. He's fixing it. I don't know how, but he's fixing it. Portia smiled. Honey, I've hosted a lot of military weddings. Those boys don't know how to quit. If your fiancé said he's fixing it, then it's getting fixed. She poured me a cup of coffee and handed it over. Now drink this, eat something, and start thinking about how you want your hair done. Because in a few hours, you're walking down that aisle. I took the coffee with both hands, letting the warmth seep into my fingers. What if no one shows up? What if they all believe my mother? Portia shook her head. The people who love you will show up. The ones who don't. They were never really there to begin with. She patted my shoulder and headed for the door. I'm going to make sure that ballroom is perfect. You just focus on being ready. After she left, I finally allowed myself to look at the wedding dress again. Really look at it. The silk caught the light in a way that made it seem almost alive, like it had been waiting patiently for me to remember why I'd chosen it. I'd bought it during a rare weekend trip to Richmond, back when Marcus was still stateside. We'd gone together, even though everyone said it was bad luck. He'd sat outside the dressing room and told me I looked beautiful in every single one, which made the saleswoman laugh. But when I'd stepped out in this dress, he'd gone quiet. Not uncomfortable quiet. Reverent quiet. He'd stood up, walked over, and taken my hand without saying a word. And I'd known. This was the one. I ran my fingers over the fabric now, feeling the delicate beading along the bodice. Vanessa had never asked to see it. She'd never asked about the veil, the shoes, the jewelry. She'd been too busy planning how to take it all away. My phone buzzed. Marcus. 20 minutes out. Vendors are confirmed. Guests are being contacted. Father Cross is at the chapel. You're going to have a wedding, Nat. I promise. I read the message twice, then typed back. How? His response was simple. I made 3 calls. 3 calls. That's all it had taken. 3 calls to undo what Vanessa and Troy had spent days orchestrating. I thought about that. About how much power my mother had wielded simply because I'd given it to her. How she'd taken my grief after Dad died and twisted it into obligation. How she'd made me feel like I owed her my life, my choices, my happiness. But Marcus had made 3 calls. And suddenly, everything was possible again. I stood up and walked to the mirror. My reflection looked tired, but not broken. Not anymore. I picked up my phone and opened the group chat with my bridesmaids. The one where Allison had said she felt hurt and pushed away. I started typing. I never asked to downsize the bridal party. My mother lied to you. She lied to everyone. The wedding is still on, and I need you here. If you can make it, please come. If you can't, I understand. But I want you to know that I never wanted to do this without you. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Within 2 minutes, Allison responded. On my way. Should be there by 9:30. Then Kelly. I'm already in town. Be there in 20. Then Grace. I knew something was off. Getting ready now. One by one, they responded. All 4 of them. My bridesmaids, the women who'd stood by me through college, through my father's death, through Marcus's deployment. They were coming. I opened the makeup case and started setting things out on the vanity. Foundation, brushes, lipstick in the exact shade I'd tested 4 times before committing. My hands were steadier now. I pulled my hair out of its messy bun and ran a brush through it, thinking about how I wanted to style it. Loose waves, maybe. Something simple and romantic that wouldn't require a professional, just in case the hairstylist had also been cancelled. Another knock. I checked the peephole. Marcus. He stood in the hallway in his dress uniform, the dark blue fabric crisp and perfect, ribbons across his chest, cover tucked under his arm. He looked exhausted and wired at the same time, like he'd been running on adrenaline and coffee for 24 hours straight. I unlocked the door and pulled it open. He stepped inside and wrapped his arms around me before I could say anything. I pressed my face into his shoulder and felt the tears I'd been holding back finally break through. Not sad tears. Relieved ones. Grateful ones. He held me tightly, one hand cradling the back of my head, and I realized this was the first time I'd felt safe all morning. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I should have been here sooner. I should have seen this coming. I pulled back and looked up at him. How could you have seen it? I didn't even see it. He cupped my face in his hands. Your mother's been controlling you for years, Nat. I've watched it happen. I should have said something a long time ago. You did say something, I reminded him. Last Christmas, you told me I needed to set boundaries. I didn't listen. He brushed a tear off my cheek with his thumb. You were trying to keep your family together. That's not a crime. But what she did. That is. I took a shaky breath. Grayson called. He told me about the trust. Did you know about it? Marcus shook his head. Not until this morning. I called him to ask about legal options for getting your money back. He's the one who pulled your father's estate records. He paused. Nat, your dad left you a lot more than $18,000. And your mother's been sitting on it. I nodded. $140,000. Grayson said she never told me. She never told you because she was using it, Marcus said, his voice hardening. I guarantee you that cruise didn't come out of her dental hygienist's salary. The pieces started clicking together. The new car Vanessa had bought last spring. The kitchen renovation. Troy's sudden investment in some vague tech startup. They'd been spending my inheritance while I worked double shifts at the hospital to save for a wedding. What were the 3 calls? I asked, needing to understand. Marcus walked over to the window and looked out at the parking lot. First call was to Colonel Pierce. I asked him to loan me Sergeant Torres. She's the best logistics coordinator on base, and she owed me a favor. Second call was to Grayson. You know how that one went. And the third? He turned back to me, and his expression shifted into something I'd only seen a few times. The look he got when he was about to do something that couldn't be undone. I called your mother. My entire body went cold. You called Vanessa? When? What did you say? Marcus pulled his phone from his pocket and handed it to me. The call log showed a number I recognized, my mother's cell, time stamped at 6:53 this morning. Duration, 4 minutes and 17 seconds. I recorded it, he said quietly. Military habit. I record anything that might need documentation later. He pulled up the audio file and pressed play. The phone speaker crackled, then Vanessa's voice came through, groggy and irritated. Do you have any idea what time it is? Marcus's voice, calm and measured. It's 0600 local time in Miami, which means you've been awake for at least an hour if you're sticking to East Coast rhythm. We need to talk about Natalie. There was a pause, then Vanessa's tone shifted, became saccharine. Oh, Marcus, honey, I'm so glad you called. I've been worried sick about her. She's been so stressed lately, and I think this wedding might be too much too fast. Troy and I thought it would be better to postpone, give her some time to really think about whether she's ready for such a big commitment. I felt my jaw tighten. Even caught red-handed, she was spinning it. Making herself sound concerned and reasonable. Marcus didn't miss a beat. Interesting theory. Except Natalie didn't postpone anything. You did. You contacted every vendor, canceled every service, and withdrew $18,000 from her account without authorization. That's not concern, Vanessa. That's sabotage. The silence that followed was thick. Then Vanessa laughed, but it sounded forced. I'm her mother. I have every right to protect her from making mistakes. And frankly, Marcus, I'm not sure you're the right choice for her. You're never here. You're always deployed, always putting the military first. What kind of marriage is that? The kind where I don't steal from her, Marcus replied, his voice dropping lower. The kind where I don't lie to her friends and family to isolate her. The kind where I actually show up when it matters. Another pause. You took money from her father's trust too, didn't you? Money that was supposed to transfer to her last month. Vanessa's voice turned sharp. That trust was set up poorly. James didn't understand financial planning. I've been managing those funds responsibly, making sure they're invested properly. Natalie would have blown through that money in a year. She has no concept of budgeting. Marcus let out a slow breath. So you admit you've been controlling funds that legally belong to her. Vanessa must have realized her mistake because her tone changed again, became defensive. I haven't done anything illegal. I was named executor. I have documentation. Temporary executor, Marcus corrected. With an expiration date that passed 5 weeks ago. Philip Grayson pulled the paperwork this morning. You knew you were supposed to transfer control to Natalie. You received the notification. You signed for it. And instead of doing what you were legally obligated to do, you drained her savings account and got on a cruise ship. I could hear background noise on Vanessa's end, wind and seagulls and distant music. She must have stepped out onto a deck. You can't prove any of this. Marcus's voice was ice. I have bank records. I have witness statements from vendors you contacted. I have the Facebook post you made last night bragging about choosing yourself. And I have this phone call, which you didn't know I was recording, where you just admitted to managing funds that don't belong to you. The line went dead. Vanessa had hung up. Marcus stopped the playback and looked at me. That was the third call. I sank down onto the ottoman, trying to process what I'd just heard. He'd confronted her. He'd backed her into a corner and made her confess, all while documenting every word. Why didn't you tell me you were going to do that? Because you would have tried to stop me, he said simply. Or you would have wanted to be on the call, and I needed her to think she could manipulate me the way she manipulates you. She doesn't know me well enough to see through my questions. He was right. Vanessa had always underestimated Marcus. She'd written him off as a simple soldier boy who didn't understand nuance or social grace. She'd never bothered to learn that he'd graduated top of his class at West Point, that he'd spent years managing complex operations in hostile territories, that he could read people better than most therapists. Grayson has the recording now, Marcus continued. It's not admissible in court on its own, but it gives him leverage. He's using it to pressure your mother into returning every cent she's taken. If she refuses, he files criminal charges. I looked up at him. She'll refuse. You know she will. She'll say she was protecting me or investing wisely or some other excuse that makes her sound reasonable. Marcus sat down next to me. Maybe. But here's the thing about your mother. She cares more about her reputation than she cares about being right. Grayson's already drafted a press release detailing exactly what she did. If she doesn't return the money, that release goes to every newspaper in Clearwater Springs. Every friend she has at the country club, every colleague at the dental office, every person in her book club will know she stole from her own daughter. My breath caught. That's ruthless. He met my eyes. So is canceling your daughter's wedding and leaving her alone in a bridal suite on what should be the happiest day of her life. He reached over and took my hand. I'm done being polite to people who hurt you, Nat. I've watched you bend over backward for your mother for 3 years. I've watched you excuse Troy's laziness and Diane's passive-aggressive comments. I've stayed quiet because you asked me to. But this crosses a line I'm not willing to ignore. I squeezed his hand. What if it doesn't work? What if she calls your bluff? Marcus smiled, but there was no humor in it. It's not a bluff. Grayson has the release ready to go. If your mother wants to keep her social standing, she'll pay. If she doesn't, she'll spend the next decade explaining why she's a thief. He paused. Either way, you're getting married today. A knock at the door interrupted us. I stood and checked the peephole. Allison stood in the hallway holding a garment bag and a makeup case, her blonde hair already styled in soft curls. I opened the door and she rushed in, dropping everything to hug me tightly. I'm so sorry, she said into my shoulder. I should have called you directly instead of believing your mom. I should have known something was wrong. It's okay, I said, hugging her back. She's good at lying. She's had a lot of practice. Allison pulled back and looked at Marcus. Captain Reed, I presume? He stood and extended his hand. Just Marcus is fine. She shook it firmly. Allison, right. We met briefly at Nat's graduation party, but you probably don't remember. I remember, Marcus said. You told me if I ever hurt Natalie, you'd make sure my commanding officer got photos of me drunk at a karaoke bar in Seoul. Allison grinned. I stand by that threat. She turned to me. Kelly and Grace are 5 minutes behind me. Rachel's coming straight from the airport, she flew in from Denver this morning. We're all here, Nat. We're getting you ready. More knocks followed in rapid succession. Kelly arrived with a professional makeup kit and a tackle box full of hair supplies. Grace brought emergency snacks and a bottle of champagne that she insisted we open immediately for morale purposes. By 9:15, the bridal suite had transformed from a lonely monument into organized chaos. Marcus excused himself after making sure I was surrounded by people who actually cared. I need to check in with Torres and make sure the chapel setup is on track, he said, kissing my forehead. I'll see you at the altar. After he left, Allison turned to me with raised eyebrows. Okay, That man just coordinated an entire wedding rescue operation in under 3 hours while flying across the Atlantic. You're marrying a superhero. Kelly laughed while setting up her makeup station on the vanity. Forget superhero. That's spy movie levels of competence. Did he really record your mom confessing? I nodded and told them everything. About the trust fund, about Grayson's emergency motion, about the recording and the threat of public exposure. Their expressions shifted from shock to anger to fierce satisfaction. Good, Grace said, pouring champagne into the flutes that had sat empty all morning. Your mother deserves to be exposed. What she did was unforgivable. She handed me a glass. To Natalie, who's about to have the wedding she deserves, surrounded by people who actually love her. We clinked glasses and drank. The champagne was cold and perfect, and for the first time all day, I felt like maybe this was actually going to happen. Kelly pulled out her phone and showed me photos of the chapel. Torres sent these 15 minutes ago. Look. The images showed the interior of St. Augustine's chapel, the small stone church where Marcus and I had planned to exchange vows. White roses lined the aisle. Candles flickered in brass holders. The altar was draped in ivory fabric that caught the morning light streaming through stained glass windows. How did she get flowers? I asked, zooming in on the arrangements. Vanessa canceled the florist. Allison grinned. Apparently Torres called the florist directly, explained the situation, and offered to pay double for a rush order. The florist felt so bad about the whole thing that she did it for the original price and threw in extra centerpieces. Grace showed me another photo, this one of a 2-tiered cake decorated with delicate sugar flowers. The bakery owner is a veteran. When she heard what happened, she personally handled the cake decorating herself. Said no military wedding was getting ruined on her watch. I felt tears prickling again, but these were different. These were the kind that came from being reminded that people could be kind, that strangers could care, that not everyone was like Vanessa. Kelly gently turned my face toward her and started applying primer. No crying yet. Save it for the ceremony. I'm not doing your makeup twice. I laughed and held still while she worked. The familiar ritual of getting ready, something I'd thought was lost, settled over the room like a warm blanket. Allison started steaming my dress. Grace set up a speaker and put on the Getting Ready playlist I'd made months ago. Soft indie music filled the space. My phone buzzed with a text from Sergeant Torres. Current headcount, 68 confirmed guests. 3 declined due to prior commitments. 4 haven't responded yet. Father Cross is ready. Marcus is handling the final walkthrough. You're clear for a 2 o'clock ceremony. 68 guests. Out of the original 75, 68 people had either never believed Vanessa's lies or had changed their plans when they learned the truth. I typed back a thank you and set the phone aside. Natalie, Kelly said, stepping back to examine her work, I need you to close your eyes for the next 20 minutes. Trust me. I closed my eyes and let her work. I felt brushes dusting across my cheeks, fingertips blending color at my temples, a cool pencil lining my eyes. She worked in comfortable silence, occasionally asking me to tilt my head or purse my lips. The room had gone quiet except for the music and the soft sounds of my friends moving around me. When Kelly finally told me to open my eyes, I barely recognized myself. She'd kept the makeup natural but elevated, highlighting my features without covering them. My eyes looked bigger, my cheekbones more defined. My lips were a soft rose color that made me look like I was glowing from the inside out. Kelly, I breathed, this is perfect. She smiled. Just wait until we do your hair. She and Grace worked together, curling sections and pinning them loosely so waves cascaded down my back. They left pieces framing my face, softening the overall look. When they finished, Allison carefully placed the veil, a cathedral-length piece of tulle-edged in delicate lace that had belonged to my grandmother. Rachel burst through the door at 10:45, breathless and apologetic. I'm so sorry I'm late. My flight got delayed in Charlotte and I had to sprint through the airport. She stopped short when she saw me. Oh, Nat. You look beautiful. She pulled me into a quick hug, then immediately started helping with final details, steaming the bridesmaid dresses that had been hanging in the closet, organizing bouquets that Torres had somehow procured. At 11:30, Portia knocked with lunch. Sandwiches, fruit, and sparkling water on elegant trays. Thought you all might be hungry, she said, setting everything on the table. The ballroom is ready, by the way. Sergeant Torres is terrifyingly efficient. I've never seen someone coordinate vendors like that. We ate carefully, protecting our dresses and makeup. The conversation flowed easily, stories about college, memories of times when life felt simpler. Grace told an embarrassing story about a road trip where we'd gotten lost in West Virginia and had to sleep in the car. Rachel reminded us all about the time Allison had accidentally dyed her hair green the week before graduation. Normal things. Happy things. At 12:15, my phone rang. Grayson's number. I answered and stepped into the bathroom for privacy. Natalie, I have news. Your mother called me 10 minutes ago. My heart skipped. And? His voice was grim but satisfied. She's agreed to return the $18,000 immediately. She's also signing over full control of the trust to you, effective today. The paperwork will be ready for your signature on Monday. I leaned against the bathroom counter. What about Troy? He was part of this too. Grayson made an approving sound. I was hoping you'd ask. Troy and his wife Diane have been receiving monthly payments from the trust for the past 2 years, authorized by your mother. Those payments are now terminated. Additionally, they'll be required to return any funds received in the past 6 months, which amounts to approximately $12,000. They'll fight it, I said. They'll claim they didn't know where the money was coming from. Grayson chuckled darkly. They already tried that argument. I reminded them that ignorance isn't a legal defense, and that I have email correspondence between Troy and your mother discussing trust distributions. They folded within 5 minutes. I closed my eyes and absorbed this. It was over. The theft, the manipulation, the lies. All of it was being unwound. Thank you, Mr. Grayson. I don't know how to repay you for this. He was quiet for a moment. Your father was a good man, Natalie. He'd be proud of you today. And for what it's worth, I think Captain Reed is exactly the kind of person James would have wanted you to marry. Now go get ready. You have a wedding to attend. I hung up and stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. My father would have been proud. The thought settled into my chest, warm and bittersweet. He would have walked me down the aisle. He would have danced with me at the reception. He would have told Marcus to take care of me, and he would have meant it. But he wasn't here. And in his absence, Vanessa had tried to destroy everything he'd built for me. But she'd failed. Because Marcus had made 3 phone calls. Because my friends had shown up. Because strangers who owed me nothing had chosen kindness. I walked back into the main room and found my bridesmaids already in their dresses, soft sage green that complemented the season perfectly. They looked beautiful and ready, and they were all watching me with expectant faces. It's time, Allison said gently. Let's get you in that dress. They helped me step into the silk gown, careful not to disturb my hair or makeup. Kelly fastened the long row of buttons along my spine while Grace adjusted the skirt. Rachel placed my shoes in front of me, simple ivory heels with pearl detailing. I slipped them on and stood, feeling the weight of the dress settle around me. Allison handed me the bouquet, a cascade of white roses and greenery that smelled like hope and new beginnings. I looked at myself in the full-length mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked confident. She looked ready. She looked like someone who'd survived something difficult and come out stronger. Your dad's not here to walk you down the aisle, Grace said softly, but we are. All 4 of us. If you want. I turned to look at them, these women who'd dropped everything to be here, who'd never doubted me even when my own mother had tried to convince them I was unstable. I want that, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I want that more than anything. Portia appeared at the door. Ladies, your car is here. We gathered our things and headed downstairs. A black SUV waited at the entrance, courtesy of Torres's logistical genius. The driver helped us carefully load our dresses and ourselves into the vehicle. As we pulled away from the inn, I watched the building fade in the side mirror. That bridal suite had been a prison this morning. Now it was just a room. The drive to St. Augustine's Chapel took 12 minutes. The stone building sat on a tree-lined street, modest and dignified. Cars filled the parking lot. Real cars, belonging to real people who'd come to watch me marry the man I loved. Torres stood at the entrance in her uniform, coordinating with Father Cross. She gave me a sharp nod as we approached. "Everything's ready, ma'am," she said. "Guests are seated. Music is cued. Captain Reed is at the altar." She paused. "He told me to tell you he's waiting for you, and that he's not going anywhere." I smiled. "Thank you, Sergeant. For everything." She stepped aside to let us pass. The church vestibule was cool and dim, a pocket of quiet before the ceremony began. Through the closed doors, I could hear soft organ music playing. My bridesmaids arranged themselves, 2 on each side of me, arms linked together. Father Cross appeared, his weathered face kind. "Natalie, you look radiant. Are you ready?" I took a deep breath and looked at the women surrounding me. My chosen family. The ones who'd stayed when others had left. "I'm ready," I said. He opened the doors, and the world expanded. The chapel's interior glowed with afternoon light filtering through stained glass, casting patterns of blue and gold across the wooden pews. Every head turned as the doors opened, faces I'd known for years watching with expressions that ranged from joy to relief to vindication. The organ swelled into the opening notes of Canon in D, and I felt my bridesmaids tighten their arms around mine in solidarity. At the end of the aisle, Marcus stood at attention beside Father Cross. His dress uniform was immaculate, shoulders squared, hands clasped in front of him in the formal military stance I'd seen 100 times. But when his eyes found mine, his entire posture softened. The rigid soldier melted away, and what remained was just a man looking at the woman he loved like she'd hung every star in the sky. We began walking. Not the traditional measured pace, but something more natural, more real. My friends held me steady as we passed rows of guests. I recognized faces from the hospital where I worked, colleagues who'd covered my shifts when Marcus deployed. My father's old business partner dabbed at his eyes with a handkerchief. Marcus's unit commander, Colonel Pierce, sat in full uniform giving me an approving nod. Halfway down the aisle, I spotted someone I didn't expect. My cousin Jennifer sat near the back, her expression torn between attending and remaining loyal to Vanessa. She'd always been caught between family politics, and seeing her here meant she'd made a choice. She gave me a small, apologetic smile, and I returned it. Some relationships could be salvaged. Others couldn't. Time would tell which category she fell into. As we approached the altar, my bridesmaids released my arms one by one, taking their places to the left. Marcus stepped forward to meet me, and when his hand closed around mine, I felt every piece of anxiety from the morning dissolve. His thumb brushed across my knuckles in a gesture so familiar it grounded me completely. Father Cross smiled at the assembled guests. "Please be seated." The rustle of fabric and quiet coughs filled the pause before he continued. "We are gathered here today to witness the union of Natalie Grace Harper and Captain Marcus James Reed. This ceremony has been highly anticipated, and I must say, the journey to get here today has tested both of them in ways we might not fully understand." He glanced at Marcus, then at me. But if there's one thing I've learned in my 40 years of performing marriages, it's that the couples who fight hardest to reach the altar often build the strongest foundations. Natalie and Marcus have already proven their commitment to one another through distance, through deployment, through challenges that would break lesser partnerships. Marcus squeezed my hand. I could see the exhaustion starting to show around his eyes now that the adrenaline was fading. He'd been awake for at least 30 hours, crossed an ocean, orchestrated a minor miracle, and still managed to stand here looking like he'd never been more certain of anything in his life. Father Cross opened his prayer book. Before we proceed with the vows, I believe Captain Reed has prepared something he'd like to say. This wasn't part of the original ceremony plan. I looked at Marcus with raised eyebrows. He gave me a reassuring smile and turned to address the congregation while still holding my hand. Most of you know that this wedding almost didn't happen today, he began, his voice carrying clearly through the chapel. Some of you received calls or messages saying it was cancelled. Some of you were told Natalie was having second thoughts or that she wasn't ready. I want to make something absolutely clear right now, in front of everyone who matters. None of that was true. A ripple of murmurs moved through the pews. Marcus continued. Natalie's family attempted to sabotage this wedding for their own reasons. They lied to vendors, they lied to friends, and they stole money that wasn't theirs. They did everything in their power to make sure this day wouldn't happen. His jaw tightened slightly. But what they didn't count on was this community. They didn't count on Sergeant Torres coordinating logistics like a military operation. They didn't count on a florist and a baker who cared more about doing the right thing than protecting their schedules. They didn't count on bridesmaids who questioned what they were told and showed up anyway. He looked directly at me now. And they definitely didn't count on how strong Natalie is. She could have given up this morning. She could have postponed, cancelled, walked away from all of it. Instead, she trusted me when I told her to stay put. She trusted that love is stronger than sabotage. She trusted that the people who truly care would find a way. Tears were streaming down my face, but I didn't care about my makeup anymore. Marcus reached up and gently wiped my cheek with his thumb. I've served in some difficult places and seen some challenging situations, he said, his voice softer now. But I've never been more proud to stand beside anyone than I am to stand beside Natalie today. She's the strongest person I know, and I'm honored that she's choosing to spend her life with me. The chapel was silent except for scattered sniffles. Even Father Cross looked misty-eyed. Marcus turned back to him with a small nod. Sorry, Father. I know that wasn't in the program. Father Cross chuckled and closed his prayer book. Son, that was better than anything I could have written. Now, shall we proceed with the vows? We'd chosen to write our own, spent weeks emailing drafts back and forth while Marcus was deployed. I'd memorized mine, but standing here now, looking at him, the carefully crafted words felt insufficient. Still, I took a breath and began. Marcus, when you deployed 9 months ago, you told me that distance was just geography, and that nothing about miles or time zones could change how you felt about me. I didn't fully believe you then. I thought you were just saying what I needed to hear. I paused, steadying my voice. But you proved it. Every satellite phone call, every email, every care package I received with terrible instant coffee and a handwritten note. You proved that love doesn't require proximity. It requires consistency. His eyes never left mine. I continued. This morning, I woke up to what felt like the worst day of my life. Everything I'd planned was falling apart. I felt abandoned and betrayed and completely alone. And then you sent me 3 words. Stay right there. That's all it took. 3 words from you carried more weight than all the lies I'd been told. I squeezed his hands. You didn't just save our wedding today, Marcus. You reminded me that I'm worth fighting for. That we're worth fighting for. And I promise you, for the rest of my life, I will fight for us the way you fought for us today. I will show up. I will stay. I will choose you, every single day, no matter what. Father Cross handed Marcus a small card with his vows written on it, but he didn't look at it. He kept his eyes on me and spoke from memory. Natalie, I've had a lot of time to think during this deployment. Hours of watch duty, days where the only thing I had to look forward to was hearing your voice over a scratchy connection. And I kept coming back to one truth. Home isn't a place. Home is you. His voice grew stronger. I've lived in barracks, tents, forward operating bases, and a dozen different apartments. None of them felt like home until you were there. And when I'm deployed, the only reason I can function is because I know you're waiting for me. That you're building the life we'll share when I get back. He glanced down briefly, then back up. What your family did today was try to take that away from both of us. They tried to make you doubt yourself, doubt us, doubt whether any of this was worth the fight. But here's what they don't understand. I've fought actual enemies in actual combat zones. I've been shot at, mortared, and tested in ways most people never experience. And none of that scared me as much as the thought of losing you. The tears were falling freely now. Marcus's voice roughened with emotion. So I promise you this, Natalie. I will never let anyone make you feel small again. I will never stand by while someone hurts you. I will be your partner, your defender, your safe place. And when deployments take me away, I will move heaven and earth to get back to you. Because you are my home, and I will always find my way back home. Father Cross had to clear his throat twice before he could continue. I don't think I've ever heard more honest vows in this chapel, he said quietly. Captain Reed, do you take Natalie to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part? I do, Marcus said, his voice steady and sure. Father Cross turned to me. Natalie, do you take Marcus to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part? I do, I said, and it felt like the truest thing I'd ever spoken. Allison stepped forward with the rings, 2 simple platinum bands we'd chosen together at a small jewelry store in Clearwater Springs. Marcus took mine first, holding it at the tip of my finger while Father Cross blessed it. Then he slid it onto my hand slowly, deliberately, as if sealing a promise that went beyond words. I took his ring and repeated the gesture, feeling the weight of this moment settle into my bones. This was real. Despite everything that had tried to prevent it, despite sabotage and theft and lies, we were actually doing this. We were choosing each other in front of everyone who mattered. Father Cross raised his hands in blessing. By the power vested in me by the Commonwealth of Virginia and the grace of God, I now pronounce you husband and wife. He smiled. Captain Reed, you may kiss your bride. Marcus cupped my face in both hands and kissed me softly, reverently, like I was something precious he'd been entrusted to protect. The chapel erupted in applause and cheers. Someone whistled loudly. I heard Colonel Pierce's booming laugh above the noise. When we finally broke apart, Father Cross turned us to face the congregation. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor to present to you, for the first time anywhere, Captain and Mrs. Reed. More applause. Marcus tucked my hand into the crook of his elbow, and we walked back down the aisle together as the organ launched into a triumphant recessional. The receiving line formed in the vestibule. Guest after guest hugged us, congratulated us, told us how beautiful the ceremony was. Marcus's unit showed up in force, fellow soldiers who'd taken leave or rearranged schedules to be here. They shook his hand with the kind of respect that only comes from shared hardship. Colonel Pierce pulled me aside while Marcus was talking to his platoon sergeant. Mrs. Reed, your husband is one of the finest officers I've served with. But I want you to know something. He lowered his voice. When he got that emergency transport approval this morning, he told me he was willing to face insubordination charges if it meant getting to you in time. He was ready to sacrifice his career for this wedding. I felt my throat tighten. He didn't tell me that. Pierce smiled. He wouldn't. That's not his style. But I want you to know what you mean to him. And I want you to know that his entire chain of command was prepared to back him up if it came to that. We take care of our own, and you're one of ours now. The words hit me harder than I expected. I'd spent so long feeling isolated by Vanessa's manipulation, believing that family was just the people you were born to. But standing here, surrounded by soldiers and nurses and friends who'd fought to make this day happen, I realized family was so much bigger than blood. Sergeant Torres appeared with a tablet and a checklist. Sir, ma'am, the cars are ready to transport the wedding party to the inn. Reception is set to begin at 3:30. We're running 5 minutes ahead of schedule. Marcus grinned. Torres, you're terrifying and amazing in equal measure. She allowed herself a small smile. Just doing my job, sir. The ride back to the inn felt surreal. Marcus sat beside me in the back of the SUV, his hand resting on my knee, still in slight disbelief that we'd actually pulled it off. "How are you feeling?" he asked. I thought about it. Married. Relieved. Angry at my mother. Grateful for everyone who showed up. It's a lot of emotions happening at once. He nodded. That's fair. For what it's worth, I think your mother is going to regret today for a very long time. I looked at him. Do you think she'll try to make amends? Show up and pretend nothing happened? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Honestly? I don't know. But I do know that she's not welcome at any home we build together. Not until she's genuinely changed, and maybe not even then. The firmness in his voice was comforting. I'd spent years making excuses for Vanessa, accepting her conditional love as the only kind available. But Marcus was drawing a line in the sand. Protecting me the way I'd never learned to protect myself. What about Troy? I asked. Marcus's expression hardened. Your brother participated in stealing from you. He knew exactly what he was doing. As far as I'm concerned, he can live with the consequences. We pulled up to the inn, and I could see the grand ballroom through the windows. White lights twinkled overhead. Tables were set with ivory linens and sage green runners that matched my bridesmaids' dresses. Centerpieces of white roses and eucalyptus sat on every surface. It looked exactly like the vision I'd carried in my head for months. Torres met us at the entrance again. Cocktail hour is underway. First dance at 4:15, dinner service at 4:30, toasts at 5. Cake cutting at 6. Everything's on schedule. She handed Marcus an envelope. Also, this arrived for you by courier 20 minutes ago. It's from Attorney Grayson. Marcus opened it and scanned the contents. His eyebrows rose. Your mother wired the $18,000 back to your account. It cleared 10 minutes ago. He showed me the confirmation statement. I stared at the numbers, barely processing them. That fast? Marcus nodded. Grayson doesn't mess around. He probably made it clear that every hour she delayed was another hour closer to that press release going public. The money was back. My money. The savings I'd built working double shifts and skipping vacations and saying no to dinners out. Vanessa had taken it without a second thought, and now it was returned because the threat of social embarrassment outweighed her need for control. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I just felt sad. She didn't even apologize, I said quietly. Marcus took my hand. She won't. People like your mother don't apologize because that would require admitting they were wrong. But you know what? You don't need her apology. You have your money back, you have legal control of your trust, and you have a marriage she can't touch. He was right. Vanessa's approval or remorse didn't matter anymore. What mattered was standing here with my husband, about to walk into a reception filled with people who'd chosen to celebrate with us despite the chaos. I straightened my shoulders and looked at Marcus. Ready to go be social? He smiled. With you? Always. We entered the ballroom together to applause and cheers. The space was packed, guests mingling with drinks in hand, the energy light and celebratory. The DJ announced our entrance, and everyone turned to watch as we made our way to the head table. Dinner service began right on schedule. The food was perfect, herb-crusted chicken and roasted vegetables that actually tasted good instead of like standard catering fare. Marcus and I barely ate, too busy greeting guests who stopped by our table to offer congratulations. His army buddies told embarrassing deployment stories. My co-workers from the hospital presented us with a gift basket full of wine and bath products with a card that said, "For surviving your family." When it came time for toasts, Allison stood first. She tapped her glass with a fork until the room quieted. I've known Natalie since freshman year of college, when she let me borrow her notes after I slept through an entire week of biology lectures. That act of kindness started a friendship that's lasted over a decade. She looked at me with genuine affection. Nat has always been the person who shows up. Who brings soup when you're sick, who helps you move apartments, who remembers your birthday even when you forget it yourself. She gives and expects nothing in return. Allison's expression grew more serious. Today could have been a disaster. It almost was. But Natalie didn't crumble. She trusted the people who love her, and she let us fight for her the way she's always fought for us. She raised her glass. To Natalie and Marcus, two people who prove that love isn't just about the easy days. It's about showing up when things get hard. Congratulations, you two. The room erupted in agreement. Marcus stood next and pulled me to my feet. Our turn for the first dance. The DJ queued up our song, an acoustic version of Tenerife Sea that we'd chosen months ago. Marcus led me onto the dance floor, one hand on my waist, the other holding mine. We swayed slowly, ignoring proper dance form in favor of just being close. "Thank you," I whispered into his shoulder. He pulled back to look at me. For what? Everything, I wanted to say. For the phone calls, for the recording, for standing up to Vanessa, for refusing to let this day be destroyed. But the words felt too big, so I just said, for fighting for us. Marcus leaned his forehead against mine. Always, Nat. From now on, it's always going to be us against whatever comes next. The song ended, and other couples joined us on the dance floor. The evening unfolded in a blur of motion and music and joy that felt earned rather than given. We cut the cake, a two-tiered masterpiece decorated with sugar flowers so delicate they looked real. We took photos with every possible combination of guests. We danced until my feet ached and my face hurt from smiling. Around 7, as the sun began setting outside the ballroom windows, Marcus's phone buzzed. He checked it and his expression shifted, became unreadable. "What is it?" I asked. He showed me the screen. A text from an unknown number. "This is Vanessa. I hope you're happy. You've turned my daughter against me and destroyed our family. But you'll regret this. People like you always do." I read the message twice, feeling a familiar tightness in my chest that I recognized as the old instinct to apologize, to smooth things over, to make peace at any cost. But Marcus gently took the phone from my hand and deleted the message without a word. "She doesn't get to do this," he said firmly. "Not today. Not ever again." He was right. Vanessa's final attempt at control was just another manipulation, trying to make me feel guilty for protecting myself. I looked around the ballroom at the faces of people who'd actually shown up, who'd rearranged their lives to celebrate with us, who'd never asked me to shrink myself to make them comfortable. This was my family now. The one I'd chosen and the one that had chosen me back. "Delete her number," I said to Marcus. "Block it. I don't want her to have access anymore." He did it immediately, then handed my phone back. "Done. She's gone." The relief was instantaneous. No more waiting for her calls. No more dreading her criticism. No more wondering if this would be the time she'd actually be proud of me. The door had closed, and I'd been the one to shut it. The rest of the evening passed in a warm haze. We said goodbye to guests as they filtered out, each one hugging us and promising to visit once we settled into married life. Colonel Pierce shook Marcus's hand one final time and told him to take the full 2 weeks of leave without worrying about anything back at base. Sergeant Torres packed up her tablet and organizational materials, refusing our repeated thanks with professional efficiency. By 9:30, only the bridal party remained. We kicked off our shoes and collapsed into chairs, exhausted and happy. Allison poured the last of the champagne into glasses and passed them around. "To pulling off the impossible," she said. We drank to that, to friendship and resilience and the stubborn refusal to let cruelty win. Marcus and I drove to our apartment that night, the one we'd rented together before his deployment. He carried me over the threshold in full dress uniform, both of us laughing at the absurdity and tradition of it. Inside, everything was exactly as we'd left it, but somehow it felt different. It felt like ours in a way it hadn't before. We stayed up talking until nearly dawn, processing the day, marveling at how close we'd come to losing it all. The following week, I met with Grayson to sign the trust documents. Full control transferred to me, along with detailed accounting of every withdrawal Vanessa had made over the past 3 years. The numbers told a story of systematic theft disguised as financial management. Troy's payments. Vanessa's new car. The cruise. All of it funded by money my father had left specifically for my future. Grayson handed me one more document. Your mother has agreed to supervised visitation terms if she wants to see you. Meaning she can request meetings through me, and you can accept or decline without direct contact. I signed it. Maybe someday I'd be ready to hear what she had to say. But that day wasn't today, and it might never come. I was finally okay with that. Marcus and I used part of the returned money to take a real honeymoon, 2 weeks in Maine where we stayed in a cabin overlooking the ocean. No phones, no internet, just us and the sound of waves and the freedom that comes from knowing you've survived something difficult together. We talked about the future, about where we'd live when his current contract ended, about maybe starting a family once we felt ready. On our last morning there, I woke up before Marcus and watched the sunrise through the bedroom window. The light crept across the water in shades of pink and gold, steady and inevitable. I thought about my father, about how he'd built that trust to protect me even after he was gone. How he'd chosen Grayson specifically because he knew Vanessa would need oversight. Dad had seen her clearly in ways I'd been too close to recognize. Marcus stirred beside me and pulled me back into his arms. What are you thinking about? He asked sleepily. I settled against his chest. How my dad would have liked you. How he would have been proud that I finally learned to protect myself. Marcus kissed the top of my head. I think he'd be proud of you regardless. You're pretty remarkable, Mrs. Reed. We returned home to a life that felt genuinely new. I started setting boundaries with extended family members who reached out asking about Vanessa. Some understood and respected my decision. Others called me ungrateful or dramatic. I let them go without guilt. Marcus's deployment schedule shifted, giving us 8 months of stability before his next assignment. We used that time to build routines, host dinners, create the home we'd always talked about. 6 months after the wedding, a letter arrived from Vanessa. Grayson forwarded it per our agreement. Inside was a single page of neat handwriting. No apology, no acknowledgement of what she'd done. Just vague platitudes about family being important and how she hoped I'd reconsider my stance. At the bottom, she'd signed it, "Your mother who loves you." I read it once, then filed it away in a drawer I rarely opened. Marcus found me in the kitchen afterward, staring out the window at nothing. You okay? He asked. I thought about the question. Was I okay? My mother had tried to destroy my wedding. My brother had stolen from me. I'd lost relationships I'd thought were permanent. But I'd also gained something more valuable. I'd learned that love shouldn't require you to diminish yourself. That family is defined by action, not biology. That showing up matters more than shared DNA. Yeah, I said finally, turning to face him. I really am. And I meant it. The past would always be complicated, marked by betrayal and hard choices. But the future stretched out ahead of us, full of possibility and partnership and the quiet strength that comes from knowing someone will always fight for you the way you fight for them. Marcus pulled me into a hug, and I let myself relax into it completely. This was home. Not the apartment or the town or even the marriage certificate filed away in our desk drawer. Home was this feeling of safety, of being fully known and fully loved anyway. It was what my father had wanted for me all along. And despite everything Vanessa had tried to take, she couldn't touch this. We'd fought for it. We'd earned it. And it was ours. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.